everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Week in Cleantech, your favorite 15-minute roundup of some of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy every week. Today is Friday, January 30, 2026. I can't believe it's almost February already. I also can't believe we got guest Jon Chesto on the show. You know, my colleague Mike Casey, in what may be a first for This Week in Cleantech, was convinced that Mr. Chesto had been on the show before. We had to look it up. He has not been. You know, I'm not going to give you any grief for this, Mike, because I think it shows that we have a little longevity. And it shows that you care. And so for those two reasons alone, I'm going to go ahead and pretend with you, operate under this delusion that Jon has been on the show before. And then when he comes on, let's just you and I just welcome him back as if he's been here all along. And maybe he'll just go along with us. Anyway, I'm Factor This content director, Paul Gerke. Great to see you all. I hope you're not bored with the show already. Joined by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Always. Mike, how are we?
We're fine. You, my friend, are having role confusion. Let us be clear. You're the journalist. I'm the commentator, otherwise known as the spinner. You should stay in your lane and not try to spin. That's my job. Okay. We want to give a listener shout out to Matthew Fridge. He is the founder of the Trolley Group. He said he's a listener. Psyched to have you on the roster with our many millions, Matthew.
Oh, that's very cool. Fridge, the Iceman. Appreciate you listening.
Heck yeah.
We always love to hear from the viewers, the listeners. If you've even heard of the show, just let us know because it makes us feel good. And if you have a story that you want to see covered or just 2 cents to spare, you can email us. The email address is twic, TWIC, at tigercomm with 2ms.us. Mike, we got a guest waiting in the lobby, and you're not even in the country right now, so I assume you've got other stuff to do. So let's get into it. First story of the week.
You know, Paul Gerke, you know it's not the first story because this is just in. I want to read this, man. PV Magazine. I want to read this headline. U.S. authorities find no definitive evidence of hidden devices in Chinese solar inverters. I want to say that again. No hidden devices in Chinese solar inverters. Sorry to freak out the many Cleantech haters out on the inner tubes, but that's just the facts. However, our first story is Adele Peters from Fast Company. EVs just outsold gas cars in Europe for the first time. Another source of crying for the haters, Paul.
If anyone doesn't listen to the show, it's the haters, just for what it's worth. But I do appreciate the sneaky first headline there. That was slick. Anyway, the story that you're talking about, the EVs outselling gas cars in Europe for the first time. So in December of 25, EU electric vehicle registrations reached around 218,000. That's a 50% year-over-year increase. And that big surge pushed EV sales ahead of gas sales in Europe for the first time on record. Sales of gas cars, as you may expect, is dropping around 20%. This is a global trend. As the availability and the quality of EVs goes up, and we catch up to the technology that China's got right now. In Norway, 96% of all registrations were fully electric in 2025. I know it's Norway. That's a small country, small sample size. But the point is that this is happening pretty much everywhere except in the United States, where EV sales are growing a little more slowly. We know about the tax rebate, the $7,500 tax rebate being cut off. That hasn't helped sales. Ford obviously paring back on the Lightning F-150, which I thought was going to be the future of electric vehicles. Mike, what do you think about all this?
I think some automakers are more successful than others. Tesla's share in Europe dropped 38% last year. 38% last year that dropped, while BYD's share tripled. It's unclear what will happen to the EV market as the year progresses. The EU may weaken its EV policy, and the growth will depend on whether European countries keep letting cheaper Chinese models compete in the market. But I think the first point was a lesson on why you should not take ketamine and go crazy. Story number 2, Paul Gerke.
There's that commentator side of you shining through. Story number 2, we got someone from the Boston Globe waiting to be on the show, but we're also featuring the New York Times just a little further down the eastern seaboard. Ivan Penn and Brad Plumer teaming up for this headline. Power outages could rise as freezing temperatures persist after winter storm. Mike, if you're in Nashville or Oxford, Mississippi, and you're somehow listening to this show, I don't need to tell you about power outages and freezing temperatures.
Yes, sir. Okay, first off, Paul Gerke, let's get ourselves a pat on the back for having not one, but 2 Times reporters on the show in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, well done, man.
We're the Joe Rogan of Cleantech. I just want to say that. That aside,
I don't know if I like that moniker.
the winter storm early this week left lots of residents without power on Monday. Typically, below freezing temperatures can lead to snow to pile up on electric equipment and the ice to dangle from branches and power lines, causing them to snap. You as a Detroiter and I as a Clevelander, we knew that already, but many people in the country are finding out the hard way because it's their first time. With these temperatures sticking around for now, the electricity demand still running high, more outages are possible in the coming days. The storm was the first test for the electricity grid since data centers have expanded across the country. Let us note this past Sunday, the DOE ordered the manager of Texas's main grid to direct the data centers to use backup generators as a way to prevent blackouts. Paul, what do you think?
So I'm glad someone's keeping track of this stuff, because this was the fourth once in 100-year storm just in ERCOT in the last 25 years. So the once in 100 thing, we could probably throw that in the waste bin. That's just not accurate anymore. As people are using more heat during these cold spells, and they're driving EVs, so there's a power suck there. The grid is increasing under more stress, especially when you're talking about data center additions like you did a moment ago. And battery storage, as we know, is one way to help stabilize the grid. The virtual power plant market in Texas is one of the most active ones in the United States, maybe just outside of California. This weekend, though, when a lot of power plants in Texas weren't running, those batteries were obviously still generating, and those virtual power plants help keep the lights on out there. It also saves consumers money on their electricity bills. 2 years ago, Texas Batteries, as you may recall, helped prevent grid managers from having to ask residents to conserve energy use, saving customers around $750 million by some projections. That grid has been fortified by batteries so much in just the past 2 or 3 years, Mike. PJM has not installed as many battery systems. They're actually considerably far behind what Texas is doing. The upcoming wintry weather is going to determine just how much this grid can take. Here's to hoping there's a lot more battery installations by this time next year. Mike, story 3.
Alice Guillen from Politico. I love this one. It's my favorite story that's actually on the list. Politico pro Michigan Attorney General sues oil industry over allegations of collusion against electric vehicles and renewable energy. Boom.
Anytime there's an opportunity to drag the fossil fuel industry, I know that you were chomping at the bit, so I've got 2 quick points. I'm going to let you take the microphone. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel launched 2 federal and 1 state antitrust lawsuits against BP, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, and the American Petroleum Institute last week, arguing they acted as a cartel to slow EV and renewable energy development. The suit alleges,
cartel.
I've heard you use that word before. The suit alleges the companies have invested in and then abandoned renewables, undercutting rival tech through patent litigation, hiding the true cost of fossil fuels, promoting misinformation, using hackers to suppress investigations, a whole lot of stuff. Mike, your thoughts?
So, first, Dana Nessel is a fighter, and she is throwing some truth punches. API argued these lawsuits are, quote, a coordinated campaign against an industry that powers everyday life, driving America's economy is actively reducing emissions. End quote. You know what that is, buddy? That's called man whining. And last year, the Trump administration filed a lawsuit to stop Michigan from suing the oil industry, but that case is pending. That's from the same people who were suing the government for $10 billion on the president's behalf. But hey, maybe Harold Hamm will go running to his daddy, otherwise known as Chris Wrong, and ask him to help because he's getting beat up by mean old Dana. Paul, what's the 4th story?
1 story to go before we get our guests on the show. This one from Eric Roston and Brian Kahn from Bloomberg, titled U.S. Exits Paris Agreement, What Trump's Withdrawal Means for Climate Change. What does it mean, Mr. Casey?
It means I'm trying to crack you up on this show, and you haven't lost it yet. I'm doing everything I can to get you to like guffaw.
Polite giggles is all I'm giving you. Yeah, a guffaw would be luck on your behalf.
All right, on Tuesday,
a chortle,
officially exited.
Sorry, go ahead. I'll shut up.
All right, so you judoed me right there. That is a judo throw. All right, on Tuesday, the U.S. officially exited the Paris Agreement, marking the second time this administration has pulled out of the pact. It commits that this pact had committed nearly 200 countries to keep global temperature averages below 2 degrees Celsius. As the U.S. backs out, these other countries will continue pursuing the goal. Because here's the truth, Paul Gerke, climate disruption is caused by pollution. Pollution is waste, and waste is dumb. Other countries get that, but the current clown car that's driving all over U.S. clean economy leadership doesn't. The White House claimed this move would save U.S. taxpayers money from, quote, ineffective or hostile agendas, end quote. And that, my friends, is another sound of man whining. Paul.
I'll put it to you simple, guys. Whether or not you think that the U.S. is acting like an adult right now, one of the adults left the room. And the adults have got to set an example here when you're talking about adults with budgets and resources. And without the participation of the world's largest economy and second largest polluter after China, staying under 2C is just not going to happen, guys. And it's going to give other nations cover to soften their commitments. If the USA can't do it, how the hell can we do it in Somalia or whatever? Plus, after 2 years of decline, preliminary estimates show that U.S. carbon pollution went up in 2025, driven by more fossil fuel for heating. All that clean coal we love to burn, Mike, clean coal. U.S. supposed to provide more than 20% of UN climate body's budget for 24-25, paid only about 3% so far. Mike, let's get to our last story of the day.
Absolutely. Jon Chesto, Boston Globe, who has not been on the show yet. I'll admit it, fine. But I wish he had been.
Thanks for having me back.
I wish he had been.
Yes. Thanks
And
for
I
playing
just
along,
want to
John.
say,
Good to see you again.
what a sport. All right. Everybody's piling on the old man. He's forgetting his things. All right. Next thing I know, Paul Gerke will be sticking my hand in warm water while I'm sleeping. All right. Newer power line provided little juice to New England during storm frigid temperatures. Jon Chesto, I hope this doesn't mean you're a Cleantech hater. Just saying. But I want to know, our readers need to know, if they have not read this important story, which we want them to do, what is its bottom line, sir?
The bottom line is 10 years ago, Hydro-Quebec was coming to New York and New England, and my focus is New England at the Boston Globe, trying to sell its excess hydropower. It took a while to build up these power lines. We just finally finished the power line through Maine to access Hydro-Quebec hydropower. 10 years later, I'm not as familiar with the New York line, but that is going to open up in a few months. I can tell you the New England line has been a saga and a half, litigation, just major political campaigns in Maine, but we finally got it done. They powered it up earlier this month. And what's happened in the past 10 years is there have been 3 years of droughts in Quebec, and that has made the reservoirs run kind of low. And so they don't have excess hydropower anymore. And during this, we had this really bad storm last weekend, and more importantly, really low temperatures. And it's a week after the line went on. I said, okay, I'm going to start checking out the ISO New England real time to see how the power line's doing. And at Saturday morning, I'm like, oh, thank God we have that extra 1,000 megawatts to support the grid. And then by like 3 or 4 Saturday afternoon, nope, it's gone. And then my phone's blowing up with people texting who were doing the same thing, saying, can you believe the line's gone already? And it didn't come back on for a little over 2 days, at least not back on fully. There were a few moments where we had some power briefly. And so, hydro, in Quebec, we heat with natural gas primarily here in New England, although we have a lot of oil and we do have some electric heat. But in Quebec, most residential heat is electric. So they needed that power. And they were dealing with the same climate issue or the same temperature issues we were dealing with. So not only did they not send any that they were contractually required to send to New England, they actually imported power from New England via an older line known as Phase 2. So we were really down power to Quebec when we should have been having power coming from Quebec to New England. And as a result, we had to fire up just about every single, clunky old oil generator that we have all over New England. We had to fire them up to keep the lights on.
So this is obviously a big mess. I first want to just say, John, this is capital J journalism in the energy space, monitoring a new transmission line a week after it goes off because that there's a big storm. We're going to need it. Thanks for doing something like this, first of all, and bringing it to the attention. No, I mean, legitimately, this is the kind of thing where I'm like, man, I guess I could have done something like this, but I didn't because I'm not as smart as you. No, but the fact that you were monitoring this, it says volumes about just how much cooperation and sharing and planning and modeling goes into all of this. And am I mistaken in assuming that this transmission line is among those that gets lumped into these hostage negotiations when we're threatening Canada and they're like, well, we're going to stop sending you power. Is this one of those bargaining chips in that ongoing back and forth we have with Canada?
It did come up a little because, it's funny you mentioned that. We first started, Hydro-Quebec was importing from us last winter when all this, Trump versus Canada stuff started. And I actually wrote about it then saying, oh no, we're not getting power from Canada that we usually get. That is off of the older line, the phase 2. But the reality was it wasn't because of Trump. It was because of this issue with the low reservoirs. They were actually trying to build the reservoirs so they had enough power for their own needs and for these 2 contracts that they have with the New York and New England lines. It had come up, but these are contractual obligations, and they're sort of legally required to do it. So it was more of a discussion point than a hostage negotiation, I guess I'd say.
Well, what happens now? Is there like some penalty that's levied?
It's a good question. The contracts do allow for penalties because they're required to get to deliver this power, but there is leeway because they have time to sort of make up the electricity that they were supposed to deliver. Both Hydro-Quebec and the Healy administration, that's Governor Maura Healy of Massachusetts, it was the utilities in Massachusetts that signed the contracts that were used to finance this power line. So it's really a Massachusetts project, even though it came through Maine primarily. They both say, oh, there'll be penalties to pay, to make up for the fact that the power wasn't there as contractually obligated. But my read of the contract is there's some wiggle room to kind of make up for lost time a little bit later in the winter. They could probably send a little more power. I mean, where they don't have a ton of extra capacity on that line, but I think they could. I think they will be able to make up for it. So Hydro-Quebec says, yes, we'll pay penalties. I don't know what that'll be. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lessen the potential penalties by sending us more power to make up for the difference in not being there. But what we really want them to be there on the coldest days for the 2 reasons why we're building the line. It was for reliability, and so we don't have to run these dirty oil plants, which are sort of in New England. They're the natural gas plants, which normally power the grid. They're back those oil. They have oil peaker plants. A lot of them have them as backups, and the natural gas is hard to get because we use natural gas for heating, so that gets sucked into the heating system. So they all turn to oil, and it's pretty expensive and it's pretty dirty. We had carbon emissions close to triple during the storm. So I do think it's a question of maybe Hydro-Quebec pays penalties, but we could be at this again if this the weather system like this comes our way again.
Jon, I'm struck by 2 things. First, we notice a lot. This is actually an increasing trend in the coverage that we cover. You see instance here and there, but the pace is picking up where the effects of extreme weather driven by climate disruption is actually making delivery of climate change solutions technologies harder. So I note drought in Quebec lowered their ability to deliver cleaner energy through lines that had been hard won. And the demand for it had been created by, you guessed it, extreme weather that 200 of 340 million Americans were experiencing. What's so insane is that at the same time, the need is going up because of climate disruption writ large. We're canceling 1,891 planned solar and wind farms, and we're in this legal battle on offshore wind plants that would provide native clean energy to New England. It's this Alice in Wonderland situation where we need everything to be working, and instead we're putting sticks in the bicycle spokes and wondering why we're face planting on the pavement. It's like Alice in Wonderland. I don't know. I guess my question for you is, in your reporting, what are people saying is the solution that puts more resilience in the system?
There's a few things going on. I would say the main focus here in New England, especially given the antipathy toward clean energy at the federal level right now, because we obviously have 2 offshore wind projects that are like on the 1 yard line, and that got tripped up by a stop work order in December, and there were lawsuits, and now they're supposed to resume. But I mean, we really need that electricity from those 2 offshore wind farms, and all the other offshore wind farms that were once planned those are now, who knows when we'll see those. So the idea is we need more transmission. That's something we can control in New England. So they're looking at improving the transmission lines so that electricity can flow better from north to south. The hope is that Maine which has a lot of wilderness and is somewhat accepting of wind farms, that we can get more onshore wind farms going in Maine, and we can access the electricity and circulate it better to build more resiliency for the grid. But we really did need those offshore wind farms. And New England, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, is the only place in the country, or so I'm told, or only ISO in the country where there are no new natural gas plants. We have no other real big plants coming online. We have some solar coming, but it's bits and pieces. And in the winter, when the snow falls and covers the panels, they're not much help. So I think transmission will be the key. I think getting some onshore wind will be the key. It's offshore wind is along we have 2, like I said, 2 wind farms that are coming online, with fingers crossed, but that they were long counted on, and we're going to need more of that. And I wouldn't count on any more offshore wind for New England in a long time.
Paul, we have to move away from the museum called Self-Inflicted Wounds. Note that solar panels in solar farms and snowy areas can be clean, it can function, but never mind that. Paul, we need to go to our Cleantecher of the week, my friend.
Yeah, great conversation here with John. Could pick his ear all day, but we got to get to the Cleantecher of the week. Let's do it. Andrew Beebe, managing director at Obvious Ventures. This week, that company announced Fund 5, which closed at 360. That's $360 million in change. Is that right? That's a lot of money. Congrats, yes, Andrew, our Cleantecher of the week. Woo.
And we got to thank our stand-in producer, Claire Quirin, who is pretending to be Brian Mendez.
Without
that
the
means
goatee.
we're not having to put up with clothing allowance demands and private jets and things like that we usually get from
Claire's
Mendez.
just a hard worker.
Hey, she is. She's unsung hero of the show. Alex Peters, we're going to throw in a shout out to him, and we're going to thank Jon Chesto for coming on and putting up with us, Paul.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Hey, if you guys
Thanks
are
for
coming
having me again.
Of course. Can't wait for round 3, brother.
Yeah, that's right.
This guy's fantastic. Hey, if you're headed out to DTech, by the way, and you're catching this episode as it gets published, I'm headed out there as well. Come say hi if you see me running around out in San Diego. And if you like the show, subscribe, leave some feedback, share story suggestions to the email we mentioned, twic@tigercomm.us. And you can also read all the articles we discuss each week by clicking on the links that are in the episode description and in the post on factorthis.com. Be good, people.